Okay, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I'll say that again. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Okay, thank you. We're here today to celebrate a man who left his mark on England in a myriad of ways. His contribution to the language and expressions we read throughout the King James Bible, his essays on life and observation, his method for true scientific practice and application, his work and influence as a lawyer, and his philosophical and poetic and theatrical works. This man who served both under Queen Elizabeth I and King James I, both as Attorney General of England and Wales, and later as Lord High Chancellor of England. This man was Sir Francis Bacon. Someone, in referring what he thought he knew of the man, remarked, "Oh, that corrupt lawyer," therefore showing us that he indeed knew nothing about the man Sir Francis Bacon. He was born in January 22nd, 1561 at the Strand in London, and died on the 9th of April 1626 in Highgate, Middlesex. He was buried at St. Michael's Church in St. Albans. Today we celebrate his birthday. And although there are many areas we could have chosen this afternoon regarding his influence and input into the fabric of this country, and indeed the world, today we will concentrate on his quotes regarding theatre, plays, and humour. It is my great pleasure and honour to have with us today someone who appreciates the works of Sir Francis Bacon, and one who is a great practitioner of both theatre and film, and one of the finest actors and interpreters of Shakespeare's plays today. He spent 10 years as the first artistic director of the Globe Theatre. He's acted alongside Tom Hanks to great acclaim in Bridge of Spies. He's worked with Steven Spielberg in the title role of BFG, appeared in Christopher Nolan's World War II drama Dunkirk, and had us all wondering what he would do next as each episode unfolded in the brilliant BBC Two drama production of Wolf Hall, where he played Thomas Cromwell. And it will be obvious to anyone who knows this wonderful actor's work that I have barely covered the vast and varied list of his roles and his many achievements and awards in theatre and film. He's kindly given up a Sunday afternoon to be with us here today and read a selection of quotes written by Bacon, Shakespeare. Please welcome Sir Mark Rylance.
Oh, thanks, Gareth. Thank you. That's really sweet. Happy birthday, Francis.
Yes. Before we ask Sir Mark to read the first quote, perhaps it would be good to mention a few things regarding Francis Bacon and his involvement with theatre. One of Francis' first experience of theatrical wonder would have been during his time as a young teenager in France, where he would have likely have witnessed performances of the Commedia dell'arte. It is known that during his return to England and time at Gray's Inn while studying to be a lawyer, he was among a group of students that would devise masques and entertainment at Gray's Inn and the Royal Court of Greenwich. These dramas, also known as revels, were written and performed as part of the Christmas festivities by the students who had devised performances that were educational and instructive for their future life in the court of law. Francis did indeed become a great and skillful lawyer, but it is quite obvious that he valued the theatre as a great place of instruction, as well as for merriment, fantasies, and stories laced with truth. It is the poetic and creative works of Lord Bacon where he shares with us his wisdom and philosophy. I have tried to place Sir Francis as giving us responses to the quotes, as if sharing with us his thoughts. Although these are based upon my interpretations, so I apologize now if I might be slightly off the mark, or indeed completely off the mark. But as it's the great man's birthday, I will ask him to come in my defense and say, "The desire of power in excess caused the angels to fall. The desire of knowledge in excess caused man to fall. But in charity, there is no excess. Neither can angel nor man come in danger by it. So, ladies and gentlemen, let not the quality of charity be strained amongst us today." I will now ask Sir Mark to read the first quote.
So this is a letter from Francis Bacon to Count Gondomar on the 6th of June 1621. But for myself, my age, my fortune, yea, my genius, to which I have hitherto done scant justice, calls me now to retire from the stage of civil action and betake myself to letters and to the instruction of the actors themselves and the service of posterity. 1621, a couple of years before the publication of the first folio.
Having made the decision to remove myself as much as possible from public life, I had more time to ponder on the power of words, my own words, and I knew the power of good and skillful actors would have the ability to convey my messages, the hidden wisdom. Many people in my day may have thought that they were only coming to see and hear a play, but I wanted them to see themselves within the unfolding dramas, their situations, actions, and reactions to the forces and dilemmas dealt them in everyday life. The Lord used parables in the good and holy book, so why not create drama packed with instruction for living? As Hamlet remarks, it is to hold as 'twere the mirror up to nature. The ancient masters of wisdom knew very well that the theatre was an excellent medium for teaching the principles of life, and that the Creator of all would want his children to know and live by, even in the midst of conflict. The drama must once again be seen as a well-respected force for good and instruction in the world. Instruct the actors, and they in turn will instruct the world.
This is from the Augmentus Scientarium. It is a thing indeed, if practiced professionally, of low repute. But if it be made a part of discipline, it is of excellent use. And I mean stage playing, an art which strengthens the memory, regulates the tone and effect of the voice and pronunciation, teaches a decent carriage of the countenance and gesture, gives not a little assurance, and accustoms young men to bear being looked at.
From my early days in Gray's Inn, myself and others would conceive and create dramas as entertainment. And I could see as we practiced this art how it strengthened our speaking voice and would help us to become very articulate and precise in our speech. The very fact of having to learn parts made good at fortifying our memories. Even as the tones vibrated in our heads, we could hear ourselves command the language that demanded attention and gave us a self-confidence of every word delivered. Compared to other callings in the world, life in the theatre may be considered of a minor importance. But to us, the actors, it developed our physical moving and helped us to discover our prowess and power in motion. We could stand as proud lions, bearing no droop or apology in our shoulders. We found the discipline of an actor most fruitful and formative to our being.
This is from the essay of Love. The stage is more beholding to love than the life of man. For as to the stage, love is ever matter of comedies, and now and then of tragedies.
Is it not better to laugh at the comical twists and turns in love than to be borne away in grief by a tragic love story? Is it not better to laugh out loud as a queen of fairies falls in love with a man bearing an ass's head than to pine away at the death of poor Ophelia or innocent and wrong Desdemona? And yet I made room for love with both comedy and tragedy. But better to watch these things played out safely upon the stage than to bear these things in their true life, where indeed the heart breaks and can bring one's life to ruin. To laugh at these dilemmas and twists in love upon a stage may instruct us in some way how to play our part and find solutions with this strongest of forces, love, in the privacy of our homes. And it must always be a matter of the heart to experience both the comedy and tragedy of love.
Again, a quote from Francis from De Augmentis Santiarum. Nay, it, dramatic poesy, has been regarded by learned men and great philosophers as a kind of musician's bow, which men's minds might be played, by which men's minds might be played upon. So a bow, like you play a violin with, but that you bow men's minds with it, so to speak.
The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. It's always the words and the arrangements of those words, plotting out the story, scene, by their very order and meaning. In a sentence, a phrase, a speech, whether a soliloquy or a dialogue, the music is played, and it is the writer's skill that creates those notes of drama. I aspire to be like a great composer who creates playful melodies, racing rhythms, cute concertos, and dynamic symphonies. Like the skillful violinist who can make his instrument cry with sweet, heart-rending melodies or set the heart to a merry dance. I would bring the Shakespearean works to play such tunes and melodies that would not only ring in their ears but also pulled at their hearts. The mind is stimulated by words carried with force, intent, purpose, reason, passion, much like the speech given by Henry V as he rallies his men to wish not one man more. Henry drives his desire and rouses the hearts of his men with the musical drive and rhythmic thrust of his words.
So in the play, Henry V, the night before the Battle of St. Crispin's Day, he goes in disguise amongst his men. And on his own, in the darkness of the camp, he thinks of the possible wrong that his father, Henry IV, did by killing Richard II. And he wonders whether the battle coming up in the morning is an act of justice, divine justice, for that. And he prays for mercy, I think, and takes responsibility in his prayer for that was a very hard thing that his father did. That's the best I remember it. Does that sound accurate to you? So when he then comes back to his commanders, he comes upon them without them knowing that he's walking amongst them, and he hears their fear. And he hears one of them wish that they had more men, because they're greatly outnumbered by the French in that Battle of St. Crispin's Day. And he says, as he comes amongst them, "What's he that wishes so?" And I suppose eventually the man who wished it raises his hand, and he says, "My cousin, Westmoreland," because they're all family members. "My cousin Westmoreland. No, my fair cousin, if we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss, and if to live, well, the fewer men, the greater share of honor." It's powerful to say these words in this building. God's will, I pray thee, wish not one man more. By Jove, I'm not covetous for gold, nor care I who doth feed upon my cost. It yearns me not if men my garments wear. Such outward things dwell not in my desires, but if it be a sin to covet honor, I am the most offending soul alive. No faith, my coz, wish not a man from England. God's peace, I would not lose so great an honor as one man more, methinks, would share from me. For the best hope I have. Oh, do not wish one more, rather proclaim it amongst my host, that he which hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart. His passport shall be made, and crowns for convoy put into his purse. We would not die in that man's company that fears his fellowship to die with us. And perhaps he waits to see if anyone wants to go. He's sincere in saying, if you want to go, go. And no one does. This day is called the Feast of Crispian. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named, and rouse him at the name of Crispian. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbours and say, tomorrow is St. Crispian's. And then will he strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, these wounds I had on Crispian's day. Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot, but he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. Then shall our names familiar in his mouth as household words, Harry the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick, Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester, be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispian shall never go by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother, be he ne'er so vile. This day shall gentle his condition. And gentlemen in England, now abed, shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, whilst any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's Day.
I think that deserves round of applause.
I used to know that speech. Old men forget. So this is me again. De augmentis. Yeah. So again, though in modern states, this is a quote from Francis, and though in modern states play acting is esteemed as a toy, except when it is too satirical and biting, yet among the ancients it was used as a means to educating men's minds to virtue.
As has sometimes been the case when one is inspired to become an instrument for the muses and sallies forth on his quest for actor and says to his mother and father, I'm going to be an actor. The reply is usually, that's very nice, son, daughter, but what will your proper job be? But I think a parent in the ancient times would have reacted very differently and say, my son, my daughter, you are embarking upon one of the most important vocations in the world. Along with true science and true religion, we must allow play acting to be a part of our formative making in society. If we should make a mark upon the world, then as Hamlet says to Polonius of the actors, they are the abstract and brief chronicles of the time. After your death, you had better have a bad epitaph than their ill report while you live. If your life is portrayed by one of our actors who you have despised or ill-treated, be sure they have the power to amplify your faults while you live and bring you to shame when they capture and play your true nature. Like Polonius, many can have too high an opinion of themselves, and when an actor touches those faults within ourselves, within an action or speech, we can be instructed by it or remain in our folly.
Again, a quote from Sir Francis from De Augmentis Sanctarum, and certainly it is most true and one of the great secrets of nature, that the minds of men are more open to impressions and affections when many are gathered together than when they are alone.
By this, I mean the possible collective experience at the theatre, where all may experience as one and share in the alchemical process taking place during a performance. We perhaps think that only we as an individual are affected by the events we experience while at a play. But what if we could realize we as a whole become like a one and create an energy field where we're all caught up together in the experience, which is the nature of going to the theatre. If the performance sparks a positive reaction to all in the theatre, this is increased by everyone's individual energy at each moment of the experience, performing a kind of fusion, even though for the most part, many in the audience may be unaware of such things, since they focus purely on being entertained. But on another level, there is a kind of symbiosis, an experience of the power of theatre. Okay, we now have a short scene which hopefully will have some humour attached to it, otherwise we're in trouble. This scene here is from a series I have been writing with Dinah Shepherd, who is here today. She's a member of the FBS. Just give us a wave, Dinah, so we know who you are. Okay. So this is a scene from a series of plays that we've been working on, which cover Bacon's life, the great moments, the low moments, and also just fun moments. We hope to release them on podcasts or through FBS sometime in the future. We know that Ben Jonson, the poet and playwright, had great regard for Sir Francis Bacon, and it is known that he was numbered among the good pens that Sir Francis would have collaborated with at his home in Gorhambury in writing the Shakespeare plays. We here find Ben Jonson receiving a letter of invitation to join Sir Francis in Gorhambury.
There's a letter for you, Master Johnson.
Thank you, Barnardine. I recognize this hand. All is set, my good friend. I look forward to influencing the world with you. Come as soon as you may. Your second home from London will be with me in Gorhambury, FB. My good friend Francis has invited me to Gorhambury, Barnardine. So it continues. The great literary works that will command awe and wonder is about to swell upon this land, and many a man, woman, and child shall think themselves blessed that they were alive at such a time as this. What works we shall bring forth, what tales should the good people hear, that place of wonder, the globe, home of the good and lofty men of the stage. They shall have first choice of these works, actors with such command of their art that they draw tears from a lion and a smile from the moon.
Well, surely not smiles from the moon, Master Johnson. That there moon plays havoc with my joints when it's full.
Why not the moon, the stars, the sun? My pen can command the tides to turn should I wish it. Tempests and storms conjured by ink.
Well, let's hope you don't, because the fishermen have just gone out to sea. I want a trout for me supper. So there.
Typical, oh ye of little brain. Little imagination, little time, little patience, always thinking about your gut.
Well, I'm no more than you, Master Johnson, for you're like the fish, but whilst they have salt water passing through their gills, you've got a barrel of English ale passing through your bladder.
Enough! Lest you forget who is master and who is servant here.
I humbly beg your pardon, Master, forgive me. Pray tell then, does Lord Bacon match you in wit, poetry, and skill of the dramatic arts?
He is my superior, my leader, and my teacher. Never a finer man drew breath in my presence. This England of ours, this sceptred isle, will someday awaken to his greatness.
Well, I think you're also raved about, Master Johnson. You've earned enough credit yourself with what you can conjure up and put to the stage. You're also a worthy poet and master of words.
Why, thank you, Barnardine. Very kind words. But let us save the best of them for the best of us playwrights and poets. My dear friend, Lord Bacon, I am satisfied to be one of his good pens. Look, I've penned something in honor of his birthday. Shall I read it to you?
Oh, please.
Hail, happy genius of this ancient pile. How comes it all things so about thee smile? The fire, the wine, the men, and in the midst thou standst as if some mystery thou didst. Pardon, I read it in thy face, the day for whose return and many all these pray, and so do I. This is the 60th year since Bacon and thy Lord was born, and here, son of the grave wise keeper of the seal, fame and foundation of the English wheel. What then his father was, that since is he, now the title more to the degree. England's High Chancellor, the destined heir, in his soft cradle to his father's chair, whose even thread the fates spin round and full, out of their choicest and their whitest wool. 'Tis a brave cause of joy, let it be known, for 'twere a narrow gladness kept thine own. Give me a deep crowned bowl that I may sing in raising him, the wisdom of my king. Do you like it?
I do very much.
Thank
It's very
you.
good.
Thank you.
I like the rhymes.
You're getting more clever, aren't you, Barnardine? Soon you'll be after my job, no doubt, eh?
No. Don't worry, sir.
We leave in a day. Have my things ready.
Good. Very good, Master Johnson.
Thank you.
That's an actual poem that Ben Jonson wrote and spoke at Francis's 60th birthday, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's that great line? As if thou stands in the midst of, as if thou did some mystery.
Okay, where is it? Oh, you've got it in here.
The fire, the wine, the men, and in the midst thou standst as if some mystery thou didst. Johnson knew, I think, the truth.
The final piece that I would like invite Sir Mark to read for us are my thoughts of putting on the play, the performance, the revels. It is my own experience from days at the Inns of Court. Use them as suggestions for your own revels. Observe the word masks, and there find a hint to my link with the Shakespeare plays.
So this is from another essay of Sir Francis's, entitled Of Masks and Triumphs. These things are but toys, these things are but toys to come amongst such serious observations. The essays were generally, advice to people of power about moral and ethical questions. So he apologized at the beginning. These things are but toys to come amongst such serious observations, but yet, since princes will have such things, it is better they should be graced with elegancy than daubed with cost. Dancing to song is a thing of great state and pleasure. I understand it that the song be in choir, placed aloft, and accompanied with some broken music. I am the ditty fitted to the device. Acting in song, especially in dialogues, hath an extreme good grace. I say acting, not dancing, for that's mean and a vulgar thing. And the voices of the dialogue would be strong and manly, a bass and a tenor, no treble, and the ditty high and tragical, not nice or dainty. Several choirs, placed one over against another, and taking the voice by catches, anthem-wise, give great pleasure. It's true, the alterations of scenes, I think he means scenery, so it be quietly and without noise, are things of great beauty and pleasure, for they feed and relieve the eye before it be full of the same object. Let the scenes abound with light, specially coloured and varied, and let the maskers, or any other that are to come down from the scene, have some motions upon the scene itself before they come down. So let the actors walk around the scenery, that you can move around in the scenery before you come down in front of the scenery. It's not just a painted scenery, very ahead of his time in a way. For it draws the eye strangely and makes it with great pleasure to desire to see that it cannot, with great pleasure to desire to see that it cannot perfectly discern. Let the songs, so I'm picturing from that the lights are footlights and they're at the front of the stage. So he's saying it's good that people are back from that light in darkness. You can't discern them at first, and then they come forward into the light. You wouldn't be seen on the stage when there was just candlelight unless you were close to the candle lights. Let the songs be loud and cheerful, and not chirpings or pulings. Let the music likewise be sharp and loud and well placed. The colours that show best by candlelight are white, carnation, and a kind of seawater green, and is that? Two or spangs.
Yeah.
As they are of no great cost, so they are of most glory. So they would place coloured glass in front of the candles, and they'd have boys maybe change the coloured glass so that there was different colour of the light coming out. As for rich embroidery, it is lost and not discerned, so to speak, in candlelight. Let the suits of the maskers be graceful, and such as become the person when the visors are off. So they had masks and they could lift their visors, not after examples of known attires, Turks, soldiers, mariners, and the like. Let anti-masks not be long. They have been commonly of fools, satyrs, baboons, wild men, antics, beasts, sprites, witches, Ethiops, pygmies, turquettes, nymphs, rustics, cupids, statues moving, and the like. As for angels, it's not comical enough to put them in anti-masks, and anything that is hideous, as devils, giants, is on the other side as unfit. But chiefly, let the music of them be recreative, and with some strange changes. Some sweet odours suddenly coming forth, without any drops falling, are in such a company as there is steam and heat, things of great pleasure and refreshment. So he's also saying, fill the theatre with odours and smells, that would be a very nice thing when you come to the theatre. Double masks, one of men, another of ladies, addeth state and variety. But all is nothing, except the room be kept clear and neat. Very detailed talk of theatre.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mark. So I'm just going to speak generally about my impressions of Sir Francis Bacon. I'm still getting to know this great man, and there's so many levels to him. It's hard to cover everything that he did and achieved, and the influences that he still has on people today. So I'm just going to dive in and start reading. Anyone embarking on talking about Sir Francis Bacon will have quite a task, because one will ask oneself the question, with such a man, where do I begin and where do I conclude? For a man way ahead of his time, can we find conclusions to all his achievements when it appears that some are still yet to be realized? Many have written concerning Francis Bacon and have described him as the great philosopher, the skillful and brilliant lawyer, the father of modern science, the true author, and great contender as the mind and hand and pen behind many of the Shakespeare plays. To me, it seems as if he was a man who was able to look beyond the veil of this world. He perceived and understood things that left many around him standing. Though I doubt very much a boastful man, he stirred up envy and rivalry in others that wanted to have his capacity and capabilities, but knew not how to attain them. He was a highly religious man and very much devoted to God, and I believe that made him a great man of action, redeeming the time, using all the gifts he had been endowed with for the benefit of humanity. Bacon lived his gospel. When wronged, he did not seek revenge, but would rather submit himself quietly to the wisdom he held within. Wisdom gathered through his many challenges of being around ambitious and not so scrupulous men who sought his downfall. Wisdom that came as a result of practicing a quietness in the midst of such a busy life. He says, silence is the sleep that nourishes wisdom. He could not have said those words unless he had somehow practiced this silence, the going within. There's so much going on today on the outside of our lives that brings distractions and consumes our energy people recommending what is best for our lives when we should be our own captain and listen to the voice within, if we would dare to listen to that voice within. So Francis Bacon was a listener. He listened to himself, the promptings, the nudges within, the impulses that he felt and grasped that led him to then decide upon a clear course of action. He was a man of intuition, and daring to use his intuition, he could perceive and grasp the secrets of the universe. There was a time when humanity lived more by its intuition, when it was more in touch with the true heartbeat of the universe. Francis Bacon was such a man, ahead of his time, and yet I believed he would say to us today, this is not beyond any of you, to discover the secrets of the hidden realms around us, and to bring up and share what you discover with others. The greatness of being a unique, divine human being and living your life in the fullness of who you are. We are often told we are within the coming age of Aquarius. And being an Aquarian, as Sir Francis was, I find that very exciting. The world is going through so much upheaval and change, and this affects us all in different ways. Many have spoken of this new age of Aquarius and what it will bring with it. For me as an actor and writer, I believe it will bring an energy that will enable us to go further into our work as creative people, beyond the realms of even our up-to-date experiences. Like Francis, if we can hear the language of the universe and music of the spheres and find ways to pluck it out of obscurity and translate them into solid ideas and visions for the betterment of mankind, we will know and experience something of what Sir Francis stood for and was willing to share with the world. A friend of mine who has ever been supportive of my endeavors said to me, we need art and plays and music and songs that reflect the coming age of Aquarius. Perhaps in all of us here are untapped ideas, and if we, like Francis, can catch the wind of inspiration and courage, what possibilities may unfold for us to bring our light, our life and peace into this world through our creative abilities for the good of all souls in our homes, communities, country, the world. My hope for the future is that the world of art and theatre will increasingly be in unity with the unseen divine forces all around us, here to help us progress in our experience in the earth. Francis Bacon, Shakespeare and his good pens, the fellow collaborators and creators of all those plays that have stayed with us and continue to fascinate and challenge us, show his uniqueness as a master storyteller, a man of great humour and a great visionary. All that he had brought to the world was taken from deep within himself. There is an expression that will easily fit Lord Bacon. He was touched by the gods. There is a realm beyond this physical earth, but by no means separate from it, where dwell a spiritual brotherhood who send out those impulses that reach inside willing vessels with a mandate to spread their light, their wisdom into the earth. His reaching beyond the veil gave Francis the capacity to pluck out those ideas and to transmit them for us today in the form of plays and his essays and all the writings that he's brought forth. One theatre organiser responsible for conceiving the Edinburgh Festival said that art should be a Sabbath for the soul. In these days of great upheaval, do we not need more and more times of Sabbaths for our souls? The shared experience of being together is community, which seems to be very fractured in our day, but at least can still hold true in the coming together at a theatre. The collaboration of ideas, the synergy of experiences, exchanges of conflict and calm, humour and language as the players play their part, the laughter of audiences, the rustle of the sweet paper, the casual and not so casual cough, the latecomer, the merry musicians playing, the joyful dancers leap and turn, and the heart is lifted when all is done well. We experience the Sabbath for our soul through art, a rest and detachment from the fury of a confused and torn world. Lord Bacon's burning desire was to see the uplifting of humanity in every respect. And I believe we as artists and writers and teachers, scholars, are called to continue that work. What opportunities await our young and talented creatives in the audience? I'm speaking about Intermission Youth, and I went to see their production a few weeks ago. Was absolutely amazing. In fact, just stand up, Intermission Youth, those who took part in the play, just so we can see. You know, you're the future. And Lord Bacon's word to you would be, begin doing what you want to do now. We're not living in eternity. We have only this moment, sparkling like a star in our hand and melting like a snowflake. And we who are not so young, we have experience, insight, and wisdom. And Lord Bacon would say to us, if we are to achieve anything never before accomplished, we must employ methods never before attempted. Okay. Now I'm going to attempt to sing a song. I wrote it in honor of Lord Bacon. It's called the New Atlantis Anthem. You all got song sheets. I don't expect you to know the song, but if you want to join in, you're more than welcome to. Okay. I hope you're all in fine voice today. Okay, here we go. Can you see the rising tide? Can you hear the whisper of the waters? Brand new day, brand new age on earth. The coming years grow brighter and brighter. We will honor Lord Rylance as his wisdom flows across this kingdom. Though not seen, his spirit hovers through this land, through our England. The arms of war no more extended, and the arms of love are never ending, and 1,000 years of love and peace as we walk into the new Atlantis. As we walk into the new Atlantis, we will dwell in our Ben Sailor and perform our 6 days' work. We're shining bright, reaching for the sun. No more divided, standing now as one. Here we go. The arms of war no more extended, and the arms of love are never ending, and 1,000 years of love and peace as we walk into the new Atlantis. As we walk into the new Atlantis, you can follow, you can stay. Each and all must find their own way. The Spirit's bounty, it has no end. It's the Christed One's truest friend. The arms of war no more extended, and the arms of love are never ending, and 1,000 years of love and peace as we walk into the new Atlantis. As we walk into the new
Atlantis.
One more time.
The arms of war no more extended, and the arms of love are never ending, and 1,000 years of love and peace. As we walk into the new Atlantis, as we walk into the new Atlantis. Well done. You're all in very fine voice, and as an actor said in a film once, next time I'll come and see you. Okay. Right, I think there's just a few questions I got for Mark, very simple ones, and I'll then open it up to other members. But they're very simple questions. So, Mark, I wanted to know, what influence has Sir Francis Bacon had on your life, and when did you first discover him? Well, first of all, congratulations to you, Gary. I mean, that's such a wonderful piece of work.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you.
And a song as well. I've been to a number of Francis Bacon talks, but never had a song.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's very, very nice to be here celebrating Francis's birthday. I'm often, speaking at the Shakespeare and Authorship Trust. I was chairman for a while, or at the Shakespeare's Globe, and I feel I have to, be a representative or a spokesperson for many different people's conception of who the author of the Shakespeare plays are. Even though we may all be interested in Bacon here, we will all have a different image of who Bacon was. But so I rarely say how much Bacon is my star amongst Shakespeare himself, the Earl of Oxford, Mary Sidney, Stanley, the many different candidates who are interesting. Bacon was the doorway for me into the authorship question. And that question, of course, becomes a very deep question about our own authorship of our own lives, and the role that prayer, imagination, self-consideration, silence, as you beautifully said, plays in us connecting with our soul, and the sense that we, the movement or the relationship between authority and authorship. They're connected in us, but authorship is a little more creative, isn't it? We have an authority in ourselves, about ourselves, but it's interesting to think that we have an author inside ourselves, that we are creating our lives. We're not just victims. A great friend of mine once said, the imagination exists. We are in it. It's not inside us. It exists, the imagination. We live in an imaginative space. Very interesting thing to think about. So how did Bacon affect my life? I think that it affected me in many, many ways. The first thing that comes to my mind is his encouragement that we pay attention to nature, that we look at nature. And by the term nature, Gary, I understand him to mean not just plants and animals and natural things, but reality. And that when he speaks about nature, this is the thing that often is misunderstood about Francis. He's not just talking about physical or material nature, he's talking about spiritual nature too, and the soulful nature, which I take in the old Hermetic sense to be the mediator in each of us between our spiritual reality and our physical reality in time and space here on this planet. So in this play we just quoted today, Henry V, Shakespeare has Henry say, every man's duty is the king's, but every man's soul is his own. Every man's duty is the king's, but every man's soul is his own. By man he means men and women. Hello?
Sorry, I just turned the Bluetooth speaker
Oh,
off.
right,
Sorry.
right. So that the particularly for me as a young actor, when I first came upon Bacon, when I was 29, I think 28, 29, it was the first time I'd heard someone at the Francis Bacon Research Trust, many of whom my friends are here today, Peter Dawkins and the late Sir George Trevelyan, speaking about Shakespeare with this kind of consciousness. Generally in the rehearsal room, you work with Stratfordians, who I love very much, and it's a wonderful story, and whoever wrote the plays, they wanted that man to be credited with the play, so we mustn't be disrespectful of that. But there isn't much talk of the Stratford man as being concerned with anything else other than money and success and theatrical entertainment. And that's a kind of, because we don't know much about him, so then the scholars and intellectuals can put all kinds of theories and stuff onto the plays. But when I moved into starting to imagine an author such as Francis being involved in the plays, then of course all the ancient Greek and Roman knowledge comes in, all the European Renaissance comes in, and suddenly the plays are full. And I'm looking at them, not just looking at that bit, but I'm looking at that this is a very wide and wonderful consciousness, which, by the way, can be translated into many different languages, including a language as particular as Zulu language in South Africa, what we call South Africa. But when the Zulus people came to Shakespeare's Globe and played Macbeth, one of the actors came up to me and said, "Shakespeare must have been a Zulu." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, how could he have understood our people so well?" So beyond the incredible, huge vocabulary, there is an understanding of the human body, soul, psyche, spirit that moves in many different cultures, doesn't it? And moving into the inquiry into what Sir Francis did in his life, one starts to be able to imagine an author that had that capability. So that was a very big change for me, and it created enormous respect in the rehearsal room for me, an enormous sense of that I was in the presence of a great mystery and a very, very gifted soul, not just another theatre maker who was interested in money and small debts and things, and therefore I could do anything I wanted with the play. If I didn't understand something in the play, it was probably me that didn't understand it, rather than it being bad. Do you see what I mean? Now I see a lot of Shakespeare productions, not Intermission Youth, by the way. One of the few companies that doesn't do this, where though they change a lot of things and make it their own, but I see a lot of companies, a lot of work in Shakespeare where there seems to be an apology necessary for the play. There's a production recently, and there was a song of apology before the play. And then you could see it was just jokily being done as if it was a bad play. Now, parts of it might not be so good now, but I didn't feel like anyone had approached it as perhaps being beyond our consciousness, our very materially bound consciousness. This is an interesting thing about Intermission Youth, by the way, which I'm a trustee and a patron of, because they're one of the only spiritual theatre companies, primarily of the African diaspora, but they're one of the only Shakespeare companies that actually has a spiritual consciousness, that they pray together, that they welcome many different faiths. They're not, particular to one faith, but that consciousness is I think lacking from the modern theatre.
Yeah, I think so.
And it helped me a lot when I came into the Francis Bacon study to read and try and understand what he was saying about that. So it's really the connection to his attention that we should pay attention to nature. And so I've always tried with my acting to be true to nature, the nature of people, whether I'm on film or stage, to do my best to be natural. That the Shakespeare plays are beautiful because they're natural. You don't have to speak beautifully. You have to speak naturally and truthfully for it to be beautiful. That was an important thing for me to hear, particularly because I couldn't speak very beautifully.
Great, thank you. Okay, what advice would you give to the diverse upcoming generation who are considering acting as their chosen profession? Given your great experience, what is important for them to know about becoming an actor?
Pay attention to nature, to human nature, of course, as I've said. There's a thing that Francis writes about affections. By affections, he means emotions. But he writes, well, that's what. This is an amazing thing. I must just read you this, actually. This is Ben Jonson about Francis Bacon. He was a very good friend of his, and he says, he writes after Bacon's death, "Yet there happened in my time one noble speaker who was full of gravity in his speaking, his language, where he could spare or pass by a jest." Isn't that a wonderful, interesting description of someone who might be Shakespeare? Full of gravity in his speaking, his language, when he could spare or pass by a jest, that the guy couldn't help making a joke. He had that deep a sense of humor. And that's always been part of Shakespeare. No man ever spoke more neatly, more precisely, more weightily, or suffered less emptiness, less idleness in what he uttered. No member of his speech but consisted of his own graces. His hearers could not cough or look aside from him without loss. He commanded where he spoke, and had his judges angry or pleased at his devotion. No man had their affections more in his power. The fear of every man that heard him, Francis Bacon, speak was lest he should make an end. Now that sounds like someone who might have written the plays of Shakespeare. Someone who might have been able to write that speech of Henry V that I spoke earlier. But his learned and able, though unfortunate, talking to someone, but Bacon has filled up all the numbers and performed that in our tongue which may be compared or preferred either to insolent Greece or to haughty Rome. In short, within his view and about his times were all the wits born that could honour a language and help study. Now things daily fall, wits grow downward, and eloquence grows backward, so that he may be named and stand as the mark and acme of our language. That's Ben Jonson about Francis Bacon. But he writes in another place about the value of poesy. By poesy he means poetry, but he also means dramatic writing, and how it's to do with the affections, that it's the right place. No, I'll struggle to find it. But he writes about the theatre being you can learn a lot of things from university about the mind, but to learn about the emotions, it's not good enough just to talk about them. And so the theatre is a place where you really can learn about the emotions, what causes what the effect emotions have on your actions, the relationship of our desires, our thinking that gives form to the desires, and then the actions that follow the desires and thinking. And that we can learn by experience, by feeling those things. So in the theatre, as Gary was so eloquently saying, we are in this collective space, and our minds are capable of more than when we're on our own. So the commitment for young actors to be in that collective space when you're in the theatre, to involve yourself, and to think. I read a script yesterday, actually, where they were making fun of people who play to the audience, and not that we weren't playing with each other. And that was certainly how I grew up in the theatre initially. You know, that was just show-offs who played out to the audience, and didn't play everything like this in the dramatic form. I've grown more and more, particularly since being at the Globe, to feel that the audience are fellow players as well. In fact, they're the most important players, because it's only happening in their imagination. And so this wonderful thing that the Shakespeare plays does, that Francis does through the Shakespeare plays, of being in a drama like this, here we are, we're struggling, and then suddenly, what do I do? To be or not to be, that is the question. Do you agree, do you not agree? Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer. Do you agree, do you not agree? Suffer what? I don't know, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles. Just wait a moment. And so this wonderful thing of talking, of suddenly going to the audience. Who are the audience? The same character, Hamlet, says, "Sit still, my soul. Foul deeds will rise, though all the earth overwhelm them to men's eyes." The audience is the soul. The audience is the soul learning from, and here we are, then we're caught up in this and we forget this. It's good to forget that the soul is there. We all do forget that our soul at times when we get caught up, but then you remember. But that the drama is, so of course someone who just shows off and is just winking at the audience, "Isn't Gary a silly actor? Here I am, I'm the star." That's not what we're talking about. But someone that is connected and feels we're all in this together. I think that's good. I see it even in great film actors. I see it in great film actors. They're very aware of how they use the camera. They're not ignoring or pretending that there isn't any camera. They're never giving away that they're conscious of the camera. But the way someone like Marilyn Monroe, the way someone like Marlon Brando, showing my age, uses the camera, lets the camera in the most private moments and tormented moments, they may come right close to the camera. You know, that close as I'm coming to you, pardon me. And yet you don't, so to take the most private thing and share it with your audience, the moment when you would most want to just go back into the corner and not share anything or mumble, but to share those things with an audience. That kind of human involvement for me as an audience member has always affected me very, very strongly with actors who can do that. How do you feel safe enough to do that? See, if you imagine everyone's in the same group, that we're all going through this together, that stops you projecting onto the audience that they are your critics. And that was the thing that the Globe really shared with me, because before that, audience has always been in the dark. You know, like the space under the cupboard in your bedroom when you were a little child, or under the bed. There's critical things or dangerous things there. We all have strong self-critical voices, particularly actors. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be actors. We wouldn't have the need to escape into fantasies. But at the Globe, you can see everyone. And what did I see? People who really wanted to be there. People who really wanted to hear a story. People who were willing to give belief to all kinds of things. And because of the spinning of the story, they weren't there. There were a couple you'd see who were critical, but most of the critical ones were walking by and hadn't bought a ticket. But the ones who were there, my God, they'd bought a ticket. They wanted it to be good. That would be my sense of not include the audience. I think is a big thing, and think what the effect. Don't be embarrassed to think where you might be taking them. Each of them will have a different experience, but it's not just a thing between us. Though this is important as well. Yeah. Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you. I think I'm going to hand this over to Diane. You've got a question, haven't you? Have you got the copy, or do you want me to?
I want to say something about Shakespeare, the actor, as well, because I find myself, when I'm investigating Bacon, that I take sometimes a little bit of a negative view of this man who's taken the credit for the work. But then I have to stand back a minute, because Shakespeare clearly had something that we cannot understand now, but we can, because we love to go to the theatre, to the cinema. We love stardom, and that means somebody who can communicate to the audience these beautiful thoughts and ideas and bring us in. And I think something that really impresses me about the plays and the poetry, but particularly the plays, is how Shakespeare, first with the classical plays, the Senecan dramas, but then he put English history onto the stage like no country had before classical times. And we all know our history in England because of Shakespeare's plays, more than anything that we learnt at school. And this is incredible because no country did this until Shakespeare, until Hollywood itself came along. And I can only have to think of John Wayne, and I get all of American modern history running past me, galloping past me, quite literally, with a
guns
lasso,
a-blazing.
yes. And there, I've searched for a parallel in another country before America, and you talked about Commedia dell'arte. Well, they had a huge star in Italy called Il Falcone, the Falcon. Not many people will have heard of him today, but I think Bacon possibly styled Shakespeare on the Falcone. There are a lot of parallels, but now we all talk about Shakespeare, Shakespeare, Shakespeare. We don't talk about Il Falcone or any of the stars from the Italian comedy, and we know our history at long last. So this sparkle, this something magic that the actor Shakespeare clearly had. We mustn't be so cruel to him either, is what I think I'm trying to say, because Bacon needed his Shakespeare. He needed the actor who could bring in the audience, who could bring in a crowd. And I think we can say we didn't only find a way of learning our history, we also had the first modern star is born in William Shakespeare, the actor. And shouldn't we cherish our actors a little bit more? Is my question. Aren't
Absolutely.
they worthy of praise? That's my question. Anyway, I'll have that.
I'll let Mark answer that one.
I think something, thank you for that. I think something remarkable happens in Shakespeare's day, doesn't it? That there aren't any purpose-built theatres after the Romans leave, and the Roman theatres have collapsed. There are no purpose-built theatres. So the actors have to train in the street and in the market squares. They put up a platform, they entertain inside pubs and stuff like this. This is a very rigorous training. I've done a little bit of acting in Leicester Square when I was younger. You really have to have some skill to hold an audience, to draw an audience in the street. So there's enormous physical skill. If you go down to Piccadilly Circus, you'll probably see people tumbling. You'll see people speaking in rhythm, in rap, or in something that's got a lot of vitality and body to it. Their voices will be strong if they're probably using microphones now. They'll have a song, or they'll have a dance. There'll be a lot of sensation in it. Mm-hmm. You have to create something that's special for people to stop and listen. So there's that. The Tarleton, the Burbages, Kemp, all these actors that they were very, they had a very rigorous time, and their fathers and grandfathers had a rigorous time, and they were despised. They were really the lowest of the low, and people were suspicious of them. But they're skillful, and they have to be, or they don't live. You also have the Renaissance flooding into to England. And you have to think of the English language at this time as being like the Welsh language is now, which I love the Welsh language, but very few people know it. So it's very, very inferior in European languages, the English language. This is long before what now we know the English language to be, used by air traffic controllers all over the world and all that stuff. You know. So there's this appreciation coming into England. And you hear it in Francis that what lasts from the Greek and the Roman cultures is not the wars and the battles and the politicians. What lasts is the poetry, is the stories. Mm-hmm. And so you have in France, particularly those who want France to be a great nation, Montaigne and others, lifting the French language, creating new words and trying to make the French language as powerful as the ancient languages. And that's happening in England as well. Mary Sidney, Francis Bacon, a number of people, what's called the Areopagus, are lifting the English language. And there's a little while before the Civil War, a marriage of this top learning and privilege of being able to travel and go to France and Italy and learn these things, and this incredible street skill of playing. And what else do they bring from Italy? They bring playhouses. They bring the Theatre, the Rose, the Bear Gardens, the Globe, the Swan, the Hope, the Fortune. They bring these incredible structures where people can gather. Before that, where would people gather? Only in church. Now they can go, and much more than men playing with women, what's extraordinary is you have working class, well, poor people playing kings and queens and princes and wearing clothes, colours of clothes like purple, that if they wore that colour of clothing outside of the theatre, they'd be arrested. They could be killed on the spot by an aristocrat. So this is incredible, what's happening, and the marriage of this great learning and consciousness that's coming into England with really vital street skills. So yes, we should praise the actors of that time particularly. They were a vital part of it. And Shakespeare, we don't know if Shakespeare was an actor. We don't really know very much about him at all. Diana Price's book, which I brought a couple of at the back, The Unorthodox Biography of Shakespeare, is the best book to give you everything we do know about that man. And we don't really know that he was even an actor. But he had a very good name, didn't he, Shakespeare? Because it could become Shakespeare, and it could become Shake-Spear, and then you're getting to the goddess Athena, who literally shakes her spear of wisdom at the dragon of ignorance and transforms that dragon. So in our culture, often the spear is used to kill the dragon, and we have to kill the dragon. What is the dragon? It's what I would know as the kundalini, or our natural appetites, our earth energy, our physical energy, our sexual appetites. God forbid that they should have any sway on us. No, we need to kill all those things if we're going to be clear and be bright and intelligent. There's a better story, though, where St. George rides out of the town into the wilderness. It's always in the wilderness, and comes to the cave of darkness. Why is it dark? Because there's no form in it. There's no intelligent form. It's like a compost heap. It's incredibly fertile, but it's formless. But it's what's inside of it? A coiled dragon. Mm-hmm. Now, the first thing George has to do is get that dragon out. How do you uncoil the dragon within you? That's what we're talking about. But in society as well. Why is that dragon going to come out if he's just going to get speared? So in the old story, George starts to sing a song on his ukulele. No, I'm making that up. But he sings a beautiful song. He sings a beautiful song. Sound, the shaking. And what is sound? It shakes us. It shakes us. And it stirs the dragon, this song. That's a difficult song to sing. That's a dangerous song to sing. People get killed for singing that kind of song in society. But George, Geo, also has the lovely earth, the lover of the earth, George. George sings that song, and the dragon uncoils, and it comes out, and it's terrifying. He's on his horse, and he has this spear as well. And amazingly, the spear, which shakes, so is the spear itself an image of light, or is it an image of sound? The dragon comes to the spear, and it starts to climb up the spear, coiling and winding up the spear, like the kundalini, or like a rose plant or a serpent or whatever. And as it rises up the spear in this version of the St. George myth, it drops its bodies. And it has 4 bodies. It has legs for walking on the element of earth. It has scales for swimming in the water. It has wings for flying in the air, and it breathes forth fire. And gradually, as it comes up, being shaken by the spear, it sheds those bodies. And when it gets to the horse, what is it, the dragon? It's the maiden. What's left when it sheds those bodies is the maiden. Mm-hmm. St. George, the dragon, and the maiden. That's the mythology. So he doesn't kill the dragon to release the maiden. The dragon itself is where the maiden is. What is the maiden? I take the maiden to be our soul. Man or woman. The maiden is the soul, the daughter. And the maiden then sits on the horse with George, and they ride back into society to do good together as a partnership. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So the connection with our maiden will only be found in this story in our shadowy cave. By singing the right song that releases that maiden up, and by shaking it, continue to singing that song as it sheds those elemental bodies. Those elemental bodies obviously to do with the physical life, the emotional life, the intellectual life, the life of action of spirit. So I think the attribution of the plays to shake-spear, the spear shaker, it gives you a big clue of what these plays are about. We literally, when we play these plays, we are shaking society. And they're always changing, which is why I get very shaken, see, when I go to the intermission youth, because they change them. They're really expressing something that's very true to them. They're singing them in a song that's very, very, that shakes me. Their plays need to keep changing. I think Francis would want us to be doing that, to take them as an inspiration, just as he took the classic stories. Most all of his plays come from classic sources and made them to fit his times. He would want us to take the same old plays and make them fit our times, because though the intention is the same, the music is always changing, isn't it? It's never the same hit that's number one on the Top of the Pops, or well, it's gone now. But so the form needs to keep changing and evolving. So I gave long answers to questions. I think for actors, the main thing for actors is we underestimate ourselves, don't we? I think we really do underestimate ourselves, and there's a lot to distract us with award ceremonies and money and career and all this kind of thing. We're distracted from the actual power of telling stories and what stories can do, and how much they shape society's imagination. We're in a time of very, very powerful changing of stories now, aren't we? Some of it's a bit Puritan and merciless, but that's because the times have been very merciless for thousands of years towards women, towards suppressed members of our society.
Absolutely.
So it is really crucial that the times are changing, but it's a confusing time. What is the story? It's a very, very ripe time for Shakespeare. Do you think so,
I think
Gary?
so, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
So it's lovely to hear you talking about, it's just lovely to hear you talking about Shakespeare in such a spiritual way too. I don't know many people who'd do that. It's really wonderful. It's so interesting that it's around Francis that I find these things.
Okay, well, I know you've got a shortage of time left, but I just really want everyone to thank Sir Mark for being there today. I think he's been absolutely amazing.
That's so kind. I can answer one or two more questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you want, if anyone does want to ask, I'll try and answer quickly. If anyone wants to ask any questions that have come up from what we've been talking, Gary and I, today, does anyone want to ask any questions or say anything? Yes.
One question about something that you said, Gary, at the beginning when you were talking about higher realms being channeled through the arts. And when I looked at this paper when I first walked in and I saw the word Rylance, something that I read ages ago came into my mind, which was a connection between Francis Bacon and the ascended master Saint Germain. Does this mean anything to either of you? And if so, could you speak on it, please?
I know who'll be able to help us out here, my good friend Jeff. He's not expecting it. He'll be able to kind of explain it better, but I know what you're saying about Saint Germain and the connection with Sir Francis. But Jeff, do you think you could say just a few words?
I think the thing is, beautifully, Mark, you demonstrated to
Do
us
stand up so we can see.
beautifully, both of you, and your contribution, Mark, was to show that these narratives, though they're given out by actors in the three-dimensional world, the narratives really, from the soul point of view, are internal. And it was such a beautiful way in which you made us aware, if we're not already, many of you here are aware, that we are souls in development. But incidentally, we are souls having dramatic moments as we keep coming and going round and round. And we're at a timely point where I met Gary through the FBS, and we had many conversations down telephony. And it's a bit of difficult to say this, but I had a dream one night, and just as I was waking up, I saw a hand put down on the table like a visitor's card, and it said Master R. And then I woke up, and I thought, well, I've got to look into this. Mark will know exactly what I'm talking about. And I was, in the early days of meeting with Gary, shared things. I was absolutely convinced at that moment that Bacon that we're talking about, Shakespeare, is the Master Saint Germain, Master Rylance, who was the Prince of Hungary. And we live in a fifth dimensional world now, the world of the soul, the three dimension of all this that we've gone through. We are experiencing the works of a master who is able through these plays, through the three, the fourth, and the fifth dimension, to make us to work through wisdom. And it's such a great moment for the FBS, and using the medium of the internet to build upon the revelation. I did pray, actually. I did pray that Master R would be aware of what we're doing and have a presence here. I'm not one for silly words, but that visiting card, when I woke up, that was a sense of, wake up, I'm here. Gary sings a song about a migrant, beautiful song which would be, I'm here.
Yeah.
Germain is here in the works. Shakespeare, Francis Bacon, is in the 21st century in the cosmic now. We need to experience it more.
That's
Thank you,
brilliant.
Jeff. Thank you.
So what, pardon me, for those unfamiliar with that idea, just quickly, so what we're talking about is the idea of our soul surviving over many lives, yeah? And that the great souls, like the soul that wrote the Shakespeare plays, and manifest as different people in different times. So that the same soul in Saint-Germain, this is my understanding of it, it reincarnates in Francis and Shakespeare and in different people. I've heard Jung be connected to this Master R soul, but a dream like that of a card coming in a dream with Master R on it is quite a sign. That's a very simplistic explanation of it, but if it's a new idea to that idea of the connection of a great teacher, maybe going back even to Enoch, I've heard described, and certainly at the FBRT we've talked about a wonderful teacher in India called Babaji. That they're not the same person, but it's like the same resonance in the universe. Yeah, it's the same song in a way. They're different singers of the same song in a way. Yes.
Hi, I'm one of the IIT graduates.
Yeah.
And some of the work we do is using Shakespeare's language and adapting it, or I suppose building that bridge between modern day language and Shakespeare language, and creating a piece of work or literature, or transcending it into a play, so people of this day, relates. And I think following up from the earlier response, my question to you was, how would you say that you could relate, or has there been a time where you personally connected to some of the work that Francis Bacon has done and feel like it's connected to you in this modern day, just like how Shakespeare work to this day is timeless? And some of the work that we do is, allowing Shakespeare work to still feel like it's present and it's relatable to now? And has there ever been a moment where you feel like, oh my gosh, though it was written over, 100 years ago, I still feel like I can relate, and I still feel like I can, adapt to this work and bring it alive, because I personally have felt like I've experienced some of the things that they, explained during the literature.
Simply for me as a writer, and having discovered Bacon and his capacity for writing, sometimes when I am writing, I do feel that there is a connection. And some of the episodes that I've been writing with Diana, it kind of just leaks out. So it's not it's like modern English and ancient English mixed together. So the influence, the way that I feel in some way Bacon connects to me is on that level of creativity. I'm not I'm not greatly experienced at Shakespeare plays, but I feel that there's an affinity, especially when I'm writing. And I have a little portrait of Sir Francis Bacon over my computer, so that kind of,
me too.
I feel like he kind of whispers to me now and again a few words. No, change that word, go that way, it's better. So that's the way I feel I connect. And so it's not on it is partly intellectual, but it is also that energy level, that spiritual level, which is beyond all the things that we can see, but things that we can feel. The ideas come suddenly, where they're coming from. They're coming from somewhere. And then we run with that idea, and it becomes something that comes out, such as the plays that Francis has been able to kind of bring forth for us. So that's my perspective and experience.
There was a lovely quote that Gary put about charity, how a search for power caused the angels to fall. Was it a search for intelligence caused man to fall? Excess of those things, but there's no excess of charity.
Yeah.
You cannot be too excessive in charity. What is charity? To me, it's love in action. To me, it's not just giving money or charitable things. It's actually in yourself, not thinking that any other part of creation is an other. Mm. We have our identity. We are individuals, but we're all connected. So it's not treating other people as other. Not treating animals as other, not treating plants as other. It's different maybe, but not as other. That love your neighbor as yourself, that kind of thing. That I'll forget that, and then I'll remember it. I'll forget it and remember it constantly in my life, and get those bubbles of, I'm thinking of this person as an other person, because maybe they've done something I don't understand, or I think is evil, some kind of judgment like that. You know what I mean? The lovely thing that you all use, they use a wonderful thing in their rehearsals. Try not to judge each other, because these are young people who come together, don't know each other, and they work for 10 months and make a play. Try not to judge each other, to replace judgment with curiosity. I love that, and that's a very Francis thing to me. So when you find someone who inspires you from the past, like Gary and I have this feeling about Francis, and many of us do here today, I'm sure. Then they hit off a certain, they whisper in your ear, you hear a certain note. Yeah, it's not that they're your master or anything like that. It's that they're a partner or a friend or like a brother that just hits a certain note, don't they?
Yeah.
And come in dreams. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
One of the things too I always feel when you're really listening to some of these plays is his use of description, which is so much something that you felt. Like, I wouldn't get the quotation for people right, but in a green and yellow melon alone, I sit like patience on a rock. And we all felt like that. I mean, it's just brilliant. I mean, I can think of lots of green and yellow melancholies.
Yeah.
So it got better for us.
No, green and yellow melancholy. What's the second half of the line?
I think alone I sit like patience on a rock.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm completely right, but it was the green and yellow melancholy. Just really.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Did you have a question?
I did. For those of us who don't know you, Gary, could you please introduce yourself?
Oh, me?
Yes.
Okay. My background has been mainly in acting. I first started off in musicals, Starlight Express, many years ago. And then I did a few more, Five Guys Named Mo. The Lion King. So I started off doing a lot of musicals, and then later on I had enough of singing and dancing, and I wanted to just do a few more straight plays. So then I started to just do local stuff with local theatre groups and do more straight plays. And then I found that I love to compose, and so things started to grow, and so I'm writing a play and then I'm composing a song like you heard today. So that's kind of just been me getting all my strengths together and doing what I'm doing now, you know. So yeah, I'm more into acting now than because I took a time out of it, and it was like the calling of the actor kind of just never leaves you, and so I realized just get back into it and start doing what you can. So I like to kind of be creative and do my own stuff. I'm not averse to kind of doing other plays if they invite me and it's good pay. It'll be always good. But in the meantime, I kind of like to create things, create my own plays, because there are loads of stories which are untold. And if I can tap into a few of those, I'd rather be doing that, you know. So that's essentially my background, you know. Yeah.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
You too, thank you.
There's another thing at Francis. When Francis went to university, very young age, about 13 or 14, and he found that they were teaching a lot of Aristotle at the time, in my understanding of it, and they were arguing about how many angels fit on the end of a pin and this kind of stuff. And he thought what was the good coming from it? And so he thought he wanted to create works that would be of benefaction to society, to people. And he also felt that learning could be enjoyable, that learning didn't need to have a stick that hit you on the back. But he wanted to make a place where learning was enjoyable. And that I think is one of the things I feel the Shakespeare plays did. Whether he wrote every word of it or not, I'm not absolutely sure, of course. But I think he inspired. If other people did it, then I cannot see how he was not involved in some way and was not the guiding star. As Ben Jonson said, the acme of the English language. And one of the things I think he inspired people was pay attention to nature and make it enjoyable. Draw people towards learning because it's got a song like Gary did today, you know. And so after we'd heard all of that, the song, at least for me, made me smile and open my heart. Now, this is crazy. I'm standing here singing the song about the Aquarian age. What a wild thing to be doing on Francis's birthday. But the music and the song and the generosity of it, the open-heartedness and courage of it, you know, that's as much that I've learned today as any of the other ideas that have come by.
Thank you.
So theatre is a very, very wonderful way for us to learn, isn't it? Wonderful way. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we come to?
I think we can come to conclusion now.
Thank you so much for inviting me today.
Oh, you're welcome.
The whole thing.
Thank you.